Welcome to this week's class, the Kabbalah of Snakes and Ladders. In Parshas Chukas, in chapter 21, verse 4, we find a fascinating episode. It says that the people journeyed from the double mountain from Hor HaHar, retracing their steps in the direction of the Reed Sea in order to circumvent the land of Edom, which had not let them pass through. The people became demoralized because changing direction brought back bad memories of how their parents had been sent back into the desert for 38 years. So the people criticized God and Moshe. Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the desert? There's no bread, there's no water, and we're sick of this manna bread. God sent venomous snakes upon the people, and they bit the people. Many people of Israel died. The people came to Moshe and said, "We have sinned, for we have spoken against God and against you. Pray to God that he should remove the snakes from us." Moshe prayed on behalf of the people. God said to Moshe, "Make yourself a venomous snake and put it on a pole. What will happen is, whoever has been bitten will look at it and live." Moshe made a copper snake and put it on a pole. Whenever a snake bit a man, he would stare at the copper snake and he would live. What an amazing piece of Chumash. The story of the copper snake on the top of the pole that saves the person who is bitten by a snake. And hence, of course, the name of this class, the Kabbalah of Snakes and Ladders. We're going to share a beautiful interpretation of this passage in Chumash in a Maimah of the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah, Parshas Chukas, on this pasuk that Vayisimehu al hanes, the Moshe put a nechash hanechoshes, a copper snake, on a pole, and anybody who looked at that copper snake would live. What is the inner mystical meaning behind all of this? First of all, let's start off with Rashi. Rashi says that you should put this on the pole. Amar Rabbi Seinu, our sages have said, V'chi nochosh meimisei machaya, does the snake kill or give life? Ela bizman shahoyu yistorel mistaklin klapi maila, when the Yidden would look upwards, umeshabdim es libam la'avim shabashamayim, attaching their hearts to their Father in heaven, hoyu misrapim, they were healed. Ve'im lav, hoyu nimokin, and if not, they sustained the damage. They were not healed. So Rashi says the whole idea of looking upwards is that the Jews should direct their hearts to their Father in heaven. So seemingly the idea of putting this copper snake on a pole was so that the Jews should look upwards. The question is, however, why is it necessary to have the copper snake? Why not just tell them to look upwards? Secondly, there is an interesting din, a law in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law, that says that the posture of a person when they are davening Shemona Esrei, when they're saying the Amidah, should be Einov lamata v'liboy lamaila. One's eyes should be looking down one's heart should be soaring above. In other words, actually, one shouldn't daven looking up. Rather, one should look down, but one's heart should be attached above. Although it says that in a shul there should be windows, and it says that by looking out through the windows, one gazes at the heavens, as it says, Su'u marei meinechem u'ru mi bara eila, lift your eyes up high and you'll see who created all this. Nevertheless, the posture during the Amidah should be ka'avda kame morei, like a servant before his master, and a person should stand the right hand over the left in anova, in humility, as if standing before a great king, and with one's eyes down, but with one's heart above. And that being the case, what was the idea here of asking them to look upwards at this snake? And why have a snake there? Just tell them to look upwards to the sky. In order to understand this, we actually need to go back to the principal question of why did the soul come down to this world in the first place? In fact, in terms of connection to Hashem, the soul has a much deeper perception, feeling, and experience of godliness in the higher worlds. And even here, when a person is soul in body, when a person is at the end of their life and they are about to leave this world, at that moment, everything in the world becomes vain, becomes immaterial, and they have this tremendous yearning to be connected to Hashem. So, the sojourn of the soul above is much more revealing. Why did it come down here? And in fact, down here, the body, the animal soul, opaques, covers, conceals the soul, so much so that the soul is affected by the corporeality of the body. So, why the descent in the first place? There is a statement in the Zohar. The Zohar says the following: anybody who does not transform bitterness into sweet has no portion in this world. In other words, you shouldn't be here in this world if you're not transforming bitterness into sweet. In Aramaic, it's meriru lemisku. Mar means bitter, mosoik, matok means sweet, meriru lemisku means transforming bitterness into sweet. We can say it otherwise, as expressed in Kabbalah. It's called hamtokas hadinim, sweetening judgment. There are gevuros, there are severe judgments, which we call dinim, and sweetening them is called hamtokas hadinim, sweetening judgments. What does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that when we see something which is evil, what we need to do is to sweeten it. We need to transform it. We need to take it and to be mahapech it. Now, in the days of the first Beis Hamikdash, they did that by offering korbanos, by sacrifices. Then there was no fixed prayer. In the days of the second Beis Hamikdash, the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the men of the Great Assembly, instituted a fixed tefillah, a fixed prayer called the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, the silent prayer. And it was through that, through a moment of davening, that people separated, if you want, the good from the bad, the evil from the good, and sweetened the judgments. Nowadays, when we don't have the temple, although we're awaiting the coming of Mashiach every day, and we will have the third Beis Hamikdash, but now, principally, this is done through tefillah, through davening, which our sages say, b'mokim korbanos tiknum. Davening today is in the place of the animal sacrifice. And the hislahavus, the ecstasy, and the cleaving, and yearning, and excitement that we have in davening, this is the fire which smelts and removes any impurities and converts any evil into good and sweetens the judgment. Let's explain this concept somewhat further. There is a fascinating Chazal statement of our sages that says, Satan upenina l'shem shamayim niskavnu. The Satan and Penina had good intentions for the sake of heaven. What does that mean? We find that in the book of Eov, in the book of Job, the Satan was given power to bring all the affliction upon Eov. However, he had good intentions. Similarly, by Chana. Chana, the wife of Elkanah, the mother of the prophet Shmuel, was barren for 19.5 years. Elkanah had another wife called Penina, from whom he had 10 children. So it was quite clear that the infertility was from Chana. Penina would vex Chana, and she would use every opportunity to prod her and say, you see, you think you're the more righteous one. See, she has children already. Penina has children and Chana doesn't. And this vexation would cause Chana to storm the heavens. It was her tefillah, it was her prayer in Shiloh, when she stormed the heavens and requested a child. And in fact, Eli thought she was so intoxicated because of her devoutness in prayer that she was then ultimately blessed with a child whom she dedicated to Hashem. And of course, that was the prophet Shmuel, the prophet Samuel. So our sages say that Penina meant well. She meant for the sake of heaven, because she felt that by vexing Chana, she would cause Chana to daven. And she felt that it was through heartfelt prayer that in fact there would be good results. Our sages say that in fact, although she meant well, it had its repercussions, and it didn't bode well for Penina herself. In fact, that's not the correct way to vex another person in order to make them daven. Rather, one needs to daven for them, show compassion, say a kapitel tehillim for them. But it really wasn't the correct way. Nevertheless, that's what the Chazal say, that both the Satan and Penina had good intentions. This, however, contradicts another statement of the sages. The Gemara in Sukkah says that the Satan, the very same Satan, cast his eyes in jealousy and spite against the first temple and destroyed it. So the implication is that the Satan is an evil entity out there out of malice to destroy. How does that not contradict what we just said, that the Satan and Penina both act for the sake of heaven? The Alter Rebbe brings a Zohar to explain this. The Zohar says that there was once a king. This is a mashal, a parable. There was once a king who had a son. And he brought the son up, a prince, in the finest traditions, sent him to the best schools, gave him the best tutors. And then it was the king's desire at some stage to test the moral compass of his son. And so he hired a harlot and commissioned her to seduce his son. And he told her that he would pay her handsomely for her work. Now, of course, there are one of two outcomes of this test. One outcome is that the prince resists temptation, stands true to his education, does not fall in the face of temptation. And then the king is delighted, of course, with his son, with his fiber, with his resistance, with his resilience. And he's happy with the harlot as well. She was, at the end of the day, the instrument of highlighting the prince's excellence. The other outcome, however, is disastrous. The prince is seduced and succumbs. The prince loses his father's eye, and he shows and displays his great weakness. The harlot gets paid because that's what she was commissioned to do. But the king is unhappy with her because she was the instrument of the downfall of the prince. Says the Zohar that the Satan means l'shem shamayim. The Satan works for the sake of heaven, because the Satan is like the harlot in the story, commissioned by God, employed, given energy by the Almighty, given existence by the Almighty to create this arena of challenge in the world. In order to have free choice, there needs to be the existence of good and evil. And there needs to be the free choice to choose good and life over death and evil. In order to have that, one must have temptation. And in order to have that, one must have the opportunity. And this is this world. And Hashem created it and vivifies it and gives creative energy to the sitra achra, to the side of unholiness. But like in the story of the harlot and the prince, it is only to resist, to overcome, and then, of course, the king is happy with both. Now, the Alter Rebbe explains the following. It depends where you are looking. If you're looking in Mokor and Shoresh, if you are looking in source, in root, then the Satan means l'shem shamayim. means for the sake of heaven. However, as that comes down into this world through the chain order of creation, it actually manifests itself down here in this world as pure evil. As the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, chapter 6, that this world is mole klipos, it's full of klipa, urashoyim goverim broi, and the wicked have the upper hand down here. When we see evil in this world, sometimes it's pure, unadulterated evil. We cannot see any good inside it. However, our emunah, our faith, leads us to understand that that's how evil has cascaded down here into this world. But in its makor and shorish, in its source, ein ra yored milamayla, no evil comes down from above, only good. The good, however, is manifest only in the supernal worlds. What comes down here is experienced as bad and as evil. So what we need to do is to train ourselves to be able to look at what's happening, lo lemara einov yishpot, as it says about Mashiach, not by looking merely externally with what the eye sees, but by looking internally. There's an interesting Gemara. The Gemara says, Haroya yisurim boim olav yefashfesh b'maisav. Somebody who sees pains and afflictions coming upon himself should search his deeds. Now, what a fascinating thing to say. If somebody sees pain and afflictions, there must be a physical cause of that. If, God forbid, a person was attacked or had an accident, then who is the attacker? What was the cause of the accident? If, God forbid, a person is sick, then what infection caused it? Why are they sick? And what is the physical treatment of it? Yes, of course, we need to have a look at the physical world. But the Gemara says, Haroya yisurim boim alav. Somebody who sees pain and afflictions coming upon him, yifashvish b'masav. He should look introspectively. He should do teshuvah. What is the point of doing teshuvah? The answer is because in addition to the track, the physical track, there also needs to be the parallel spiritual track. A person needs to see the two worlds as parallels. And in fact, if they fix what's in the spiritual track, that will have an impact on the physical track. There was a man who clearly demonstrated this. He was called Nachum Ish Gamzu. The Gemara tells a story that he lived in the times of the Romans when there were great decrees, and he was once sent as a representative of the Jews to Rome in order to negotiate and to be a shtadlan on behalf of his people to try and mitigate the various decrees. So he brought along with him a very expensive gift for the Roman emperor. On the way, he stopped off at a certain inn, and the innkeeper inquired as to the point of his journey. To cut a long story short, the innkeeper realized that inside the box there was a precious gift, and in the middle of the night, the innkeeper stole the contents of the box, but instead replaced the contents, the beautiful gift, with some earth which was from the back of his inn. And Nachum Ish Gamzu didn't know the difference. When he arrived at the Roman emperor and he presented him with the gift, and the emperor opened it only to see the earth, He was aghast. Are the Jews making a mockery of the emperor? And Nachum, his response was, Gam zu l'tova. This also is for the good. At that point, it says that Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, came and disguised himself as a attendant to the king and said the Jews are not that stupid to send you some earth. This must be very special earth. I once heard that Avraham Avinu would throw earth at his enemies and it would turn into ballistic missiles. Why don't you send somebody to the battlefield and see if that happens? So the earth was sent to the battlefield and it actually turned into missiles and hit the enemy. And of course the king rewarded Nachum ish Gamzu for his beautiful gift and sent him on his way. The story goes that when he went back, he stopped off at the same inn. The innkeeper realized that perhaps the earth at the back of his hotel was some special earth, and he took some of the same earth to the emperor, and I'll leave it up to your imagination what happened to him. Nachum ish Gamzu said always, Gam zu l'tova. This is also for the good. He was able to look at the root of everything as it was above, and in fact manifest that root down here in this world. In other words, Gam, he took the hidden world, Zu, and turned it into the revealed world. Whatever was happening in the hidden world, the real good reason behind it, he could bring out into the revealed world. Now, how do we do that? Today, that's done through the avodah of tefillah, the avodah of davening. Because during davening is built like a ladder. We ascend the ladder. It has rungs. By the way, that's the pun, the title of this talk, the Kabbalah of snakes and ladders. Although the pole is used in the Chumash, I use the word ladder because tefillah is like a sulam, is like a ladder. Its foot is on the earth. And the first rung is the korbanos. We mouth over the Torah passages of the offerings because prayer is in the place of offerings. And this is the idea of bringing ourselves closer to Hashem, korban from the word kiruv, burning excess on the altar of the heart, coming closer through the Pesukei de Zimra, which is the next rung of the ladder, chopping off any extraneous thought, praising Hashem for the wonders of creation, and then stepping up to the next stage in the recital of the Shema, where a person comes to the love of Hashem b'chol levavecha, with all the heart, soul, and might and resource. And finally, climbing to the apex of the ladder, the top rung in the Amidah, when a person is standing literally before Hashem, ka'avde kamemore, like a servant before their master. At that stage, at the top of the ladder, of course, when you climb a ladder and you look down, everything down below seems insignificant to the panoramic view from above. The higher you go, the less significant what down here is. So when you look down here and you actually see the evil, the bad down here, as you climb the ladder, what you realize, and you come closer and closer to Hashem, is you realize that Hashem has only sent that down here to act like the harlot testing the prince. And the idea is to resist, overcome the temptation. And in fact, then the king is happy with the harlot and is delighted with his son. V'yohavta es Hashem elekacha b'chol levavecha. You should serve Hashem both with your Yetzer Tov and your Yetzer Hara. There's an interesting statement of Chazal. It says in the days of creation, Hashem saw that it was Tov Ma'oid. It was exceedingly good. So the sages say Tov, good, is a reference to the Malach HaChaim, the angel of life. Ma'oid, exceedingly good, is the Malach HaMavis, is the angel of death. How can the angel of death be exceedingly good? It's manifestly bad. Well, it depends where you're looking. If you're looking down here on earth, it's bad. It's evil. But if you're looking at its source, if you're looking at its makor v'shoresh, then it's a different story. So, haroya yisurim boim olav, somebody who sees pain and affliction, what they actually need to do, the correct response is teshuvah, is to return to Hashem. Because when they return to Hashem, they will see that what really needs to happen is that they need to become closer to Hashem. That has an effect of hamtokas hadinim, of sweetening the judgment, so that it actually should have the effect down here of turning it into something good. So let's say, chas v'shalom, a person loses their job, or there's an illness. So outwardly, it's bad news. However, inwardly, a person should strive to look deeper, should strive to use that as a springboard of coming closer to Hashem, of doing teshuvah, of cleaving to Hashem in the davening, saying Tehillim, begging Hashem, beseeching Hashem, learning Chassidus, coming face to face with Elokus, the reality of creation, which is Ein Oid Milvadoi, there's nothing else beside Hashem, and that itself is mamtik, the dinim, that sweetens the judgment. Now we will understand the whole concept of the Nachash HaNechoshes, of the copper snake. It's not the snake that kills or gives life. On the other hand, the snake represents the evil down here. That was the snake in the Garden of Eden, which was the beginning of the descent. This is the snake, the Nachash, which is and embodies evil. But that's evil as it manifests down here. So when the people spoke against Hashem and against Moshe and against the Mon, and they were ungrateful and they were irreverent, Hashem sent a snake. Midah keneged midah, attribute for attribute. And then the snake bit the people. When a snake bites, that is the moment that Yisurim, the pains and afflictions, visit the person. What did Hashem tell Moshe to do? Take a snake and put it on a pole. Raise up the snake. Elevate it. So Moshe takes a Nachash Nechoshes. The word Nechoshes means copper, but it has the word Nachash inside it, which means a snake. And in fact, copper reflects many various different colors, and it can transform one to the other. Take that snake and raise it. If you want snakes and ladders, put it on the top. Raise it to its source. See it as it really is. That from heaven, nothing comes bad, only good. It's only as it manifests itself down here that it's bad. V'hoya, and it will be, that anybody who was bitten by the snake will lift their eyes upwards. They'll see the Nachash HaNachoshes, the copper snake, on the pole, v'chai, and they'll live. Why will they live? Because they will see the true source of the snake. They'll see it's like the harlot in the story of the prince, and that's just an employee of Hashem to test the person, to cause them to do teshuvah. And when a person does teshuvah, that inner dynamic, looking upwards and realizing the source of the nachash, that itself sweetens the judgment and causes that v'chai, that a person should live. And so, the lesson that we can all learn from this is straightforward but difficult to put into practice. We are all faced with the vicissitudes, trials and tribulations in life. We're all faced with sea of challenge. But we need to know that that is what this world is all about. If God just wanted the soul to bask in divine light, he would have just created the supernal realms. But he sent the soul down here to transform bitterness into sweet, that we should be in this arena of challenge. We should have free choice. Re'eh, see, I have set before you today good and life, evil and death. Choose life. That's our job here, to transform the bitterness into the sweet. How do we do that? We need to raise the copper snake on a pole. We need to realize that all that challenge is there in order that we should prevail and transform it by suppressing it initially and transforming it ultimately. And when we do that, we realize it's tov ma'od. It's actually very good, because then the king, of course, rejoices in the prince. The prince has proven his allegiance to the king. The king is delighted with his son. The son has survived the temptation and has shown that his moral, royal fiber is intact and living, and he is befitting of his position. This is a very, very beautiful maimah of the Alter Rebbe, and each one of us needs to take that lesson in our davening, that when we daven, we should daven with deep attachment to Hashem. We should daven with his slavos, with excitement, knowing that we are in Hashem's world, and that everything around us can be quite challenging, but that challenge is quite simply there for us to sweeten, for us to transform, and to create a dwelling place for Hashem down here in this world, ultimately bringing Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mheira v'yameinu mamash.